afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another session of the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi. The handout for today's discussion has been placed in the description box. In today's session, we'll begin with two important topics for detailed mains analysis: public spending in healthcare and the Nasha Mukt Yuva for Viksit Bharat Sankalp Abhiyan, both of which have significant relevance for our examination. After that, in our mains value addition, we'll discuss inequality, and then in our prelims pointer section, we'll briefly cover the Asiatic wild buffalo conservation, the global Lepidoptera hotspot, the monetary policy committee review, and the growing issue of digital arrest, focusing on the key facts that you need to remember for the prelims examination. Let us begin with our first topic today, which is the healthcare sector in India. Why are we discussing healthcare today? See, the first question that I want you all to address today is, what is the biggest resource or what is the biggest asset that we have as a nation? Is it our economy? Is it the mineral resources that we have? Is it our military? I would rather say it is the human capital that we have. The reason being, all of these things, they are important, but without humans who are going to use all of these resources, they are of no use. Therefore, let us begin with the most important thing that we have, the human capital. Now, amongst this human capital, health is of primary importance because, say, if children are healthy, then the educational outcomes, they are going to be much better. If the worker population, they are healthy, then they are going to contribute more to the economic development we have. If our elderly are healthy, then the healthcare burden that we have, it is going to be reduced significantly. That is why this issue of universal health coverage comes into picture, wherein not just India, but the entire global community is looking at healthcare in a way that it should be common to everyone. It should be available freely at nominal prices or even zero cost to everyone. Every person should have access to good healthcare facilities, no matter what his economic or social background is. Now, this brings into picture the concept of equity. Again, the fact that it should be available to even the most downtrodden people, even if they don't have the required economic resources which are needed for healthcare. Then coming to the financial risk protection, because see, one health incident or emergency should not be able to take a family into poverty. That is the biggest concern that we have. That is why this issue of preventive healthcare also comes into picture, because if we are able to avoid diseases, then it is the best thing we can have. So we have always heard that prevention is better than cure. The same thing we are applying to healthcare also, because the kind of economic burden that we have in our healthcare sector, it will reduce significantly if our healthcare becomes preventive and not just curative. Now, the social aspect comes into picture when we discuss that healthcare is not only going to give us economic outputs, rather it is also going to give us social benefits such as the reduction of poverty, such as social inclusion. All of this is going to increase more. Now, let us examine the constitutional linkage of the right to health. So, the original text of the Constitution did not provide right to health as a fundamental right, but it was the Supreme Court which has increased the ambit of Article 21 to include within it the right to health as a fundamental right. Also, it is a directive principle of state policy under Article 47 that it shall be the endeavor of the government or the state at all times to ensure the access to health and nutrition to all its citizens. Now, as a global community also, we are aspiring to provide equitable healthcare to everyone under SDG 3. Now, coming to what was discussed in today's editorial, so the people there, they were trying to argue the basic kind of challenge that we are facing as a global community when it comes to healthcare. What is the challenge? On the one hand, we need to increase our spending on our healthcare. The reason being that the population is increasing. Within the population also, aging population is increasing. Then we have the burden of non-communicable diseases, which is increasing in the recent years. All of these challenges, they are putting a constraint, they are putting pressure on our healthcare system as such. In this situation, it becomes important for the government to increase the public expenditure on the healthcare. Now, when it is required to increase the public expenditure, but on the other hand, our fiscal resources, they are constrained. The assistance that the developing countries they used to receive, that is also decreasing. In this situation, this is a direct trade-off regarding what we want to prioritize more. Now, the central idea of this editorial is that it is not only about increasing the amount of spending on the healthcare, rather it is also about the efficient utilization of the resources that we are already allocating to healthcare. This is the central idea that is being conveyed. So we'll discuss the thoughts that are being shared. The first is that health financing in the low and middle income countries, it is inadequate. When we say it is inadequate, we mean that we want to aspire for the universal health coverage even within the low and middle income countries, but the spending that these nations are doing on that is very limited. The next thing which has been addressed is the health expenditure gap between the low and middle income countries and the high income countries. So the amount of spending that the high income countries are doing and the low and middle income countries are doing, the direct amount or the absolute amount, the gap has reduced. But when it comes to per capita spending, then the gap has even widened. This means that the inequalities in this aspect are even increasing. Now, coming to the development assistance that we were receiving for healthcare from the countries like USA, from UK, France, Germany, and the OECD nations, they are facing a decline. There is a direct decline in the assistance. Then coming to the public debt, which we developing nations are facing, our interest payments, they are very high. Thereby, the fiscal space that we have to spend on public health, it is very low. Now coming to the challenge is not merely to spend more, that was the essential idea, but to spend better, which means to increase the efficiency, to increase the prioritization, and the governance aspects, they also need to improvise. The next issue is that of budget utilization. So even out of the budget that we have already allocated to healthcare, even amongst that budget, there is high amount of underutilization of that budget. The data is that 85 to 90% of the health budgets, only that amount is executed by the LMICs. And this data has been given by the World Bank. And India is even worse in this aspect, where about only 2/3 of the allocations for its flagship health infrastructure mission, they have been utilized. Now, within the National Health Mission, only 26% of the funds, they are earmarked for communicable and NCDs programs, they were utilized, which means that under the NHM, the utilization has been only 26% of the budget. Otherwise, in general, the utilization is of that about 2/3 of the dedicated amount. Now coming to the skewed nature of our spending, which is highly tilted towards curative care, where less than our 1/4 spending, which means less than 25% we are spending on preventive health care. So why is this preventive health care so important? Because say, if we are investing so much in our sanitation, if we invest in our say clean environment, if we invest in say the early diagnosis, then the kind of healthcare burden that we have on our secondary and tertiary sector, it will reduce significantly. So every rupee that is spent on preventive healthcare is bound to give us more results than the amount of money that is spent on the curative care. Now coming to the good governance aspect, it is multiplying the impact of our health spending. We are going to spend the same amount, but now we are going to improve our budget credibility, our procurement efficiency, the operational efficiency, and public financial management. Because the red tapeism, the delaying decisions, the delays in procurements, that is something we are going to reduce, and we are going to improvise the efficiency of the same amount that we are allocating. Now, increasing the health expenditure alone, it cannot improve outcomes. because we also have to work upon this governance aspect. We have to increase our transparency, accountability of the systems that we have put in place in the healthcare department. Another thing of concern is that health is a state subject. But states alone, they are not in a position of tackling this issue. They also need assistance from the union when it comes to finances, when it comes to institutional capacities. They need assistance from the union, and they also need assistance from our local governance institutions. Whether it is the urban local bodies or the rural local bodies, the panchayats, all of them, they have to come together, because the sanitation aspect, the primary health care, that is something that the local government is better equipped to work at. Now coming to the flexible budgeting aspect, because when it comes to pandemics or it comes to disasters, we will be better equipped to deal with them if we have flexible budgeting and not a fixed amount dedicated to every state and to the micro levels. Now coming to the strong health systems which have been advocated in this editorial, there are 4 pillars to it. Pillar number 1 is that of adequate financing. Then we have to efficiently utilize the finances that we have allocated. Third thing, we definitely need to focus more on preventive care. And fourth thing is that our governance systems, they need to become more accountable, more transparent in nature for us to get more benefits. What is the current status of health sector in India? Our life expectancy has improved to 72 years. Infant mortality rate has reduced to 27 per 1000 live births. The maternal mortality rate, which is the maternal deaths per 1 lakh live births, that has also reduced to 93. Under 5 mortality has also reduced to 31 per 1000 live births. Now you contrast all of these achievements with this new challenge that we are right now facing, wherein the burden of non-communicable diseases, it is increasing. Diseases like diabetes, cancer, the non-transferable ones, they are increasing by the day. Now let us discuss the challenges that our health sector as such is facing in general. First is that of inadequate infrastructure. So when it comes to the primary health care, the community health centers or the primary health centers, there is uneven distribution within the urban and the rural areas. So what is the distribution? The urban areas, they have almost 75% of our healthcare resources or healthcare infrastructure. Whereas the population, the rural areas still have about 65% of the population. So such less amount of infrastructure dealing with a higher amount of disease burden, this is the issue we are facing. Then there is poor maintenance, insufficient equipments, less availability of beds, less availability of diagnostic equipments that we are facing at the rural areas. The next issue that we are facing is that of shortage of doctors, nurses and specialists or trained people in the medical field. Then come the financial challenges that we are facing, wherein our spending right now is even less than 2% of our GDP on the healthcare. Out of pocket expenditure, which is the expenditure that the families are spending on healthcare, it is close to 39%, which is very high. Then the health insurance, that is very limited. Then coming to the quality of the care, there is overcrowding, there is waiting times, long waiting hours before you get to see a doctor in rural areas. Then coming to the high disease burden, wherein the NCDs, non-communicable diseases like diabetes, hypertension, cancer, cardiovascular diseases, all of them are increasing. Mental health issues are also on the rise. And there are also infectious diseases that are ever prevalent. Then coming to the preventive healthcare gap, there is low emphasis on prevention and health promotion. So the screening at the early stages, it is very poor. The diagnostic or detection, it is very poor at the early stages. Then the life-changing habits, for example, focusing on fitness, that is something that is not taken care of. Focusing on clean drinking water, clean environment, all of these areas, they are not taken care of in general. Then coming to the rural, urban and the regional disparities. So even within the states, There are states with very high advanced healthcare facilities, while there are others which still remain very lagging on this front. Coming to the governance issues, so there is weak monitoring, the data systems, they are not robust, and the accountability that is yet to be set up. This accompanied with the budget allocation, which is already low, and even out of that budget, the allocation that is not properly utilized. This is the systemic issue we have. Then we have the digital divide issue, wherein when it comes to say e-Sanjeevani, when it comes to telemedicine, the people who are not digitally literate, they are not able to take the benefits of the new initiatives that we have in this front. Coming to the social determinants, there is poverty. So you must be recognizing already that there is a higher burden of diseases, of healthcare on the poor section. There are also certain vulnerable sections like women, elderly, persons with disabilities, who are highly vulnerable to get impacted by the harsh burden of the health sector. Now coming to the government initiatives, what all has the government done for a stronger health system in India? First is the Ayushman Bharat. Within this we have two components that are working, the PMJAY, Jan Arogya Yojana, and the health and wellness centers. Both of these aided with each other. So this is working on providing insurance of 5 lakh per family. And this is working on establishing the primary healthcare sectors in the rural areas and in the hinterlands. Now coming to the National Health Mission, herein we are focusing on improving the reproductive, maternal, newborn, child health, and also on the non-communicable diseases, with a special focus on the rural areas again. Then coming to the Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, wherein we are building a digital health ecosystem for universal access, because digital space is something that is accessible at all times by everyone. Therefore, to reach to the people who have still been left untouched by all of these schemes, we are planning to reach them through this mission. When it comes to vaccination or immunization, we have Mission Indradhanush in this regard. When it comes to providing generic medicines at low cost, at affordable prices, we have Jan Aushadhi Yojana. Then we have e-Sanjeevani for telemedicine. We have Poshan for working on the malnutrition aspect in the school years. Then we have PM Matru Vandana Yojana, which is focusing on the maternal health. Then the National Program for Non-Communicable Diseases, wherein we are focusing paying renewed attention to the NCDs. Now coming to the international best practices. So you will notice certain common aspects to the international best practices. One is that they are focusing on universal care. So every citizen should have access to the healthcare infrastructure. The second aspect you would find common amongst them is the primary care network. So the network at the local levels, which is functioning in the rural areas, because that is the first point of contact between the patient and the doctor. And the early on a disease is tackled, the better it is for us as a healthcare system. Now, both of these areas you will find common to all of these countries. You also need to focus on countries like Thailand, because these are middle income countries. Yet they have been able to build a robust healthcare ecosystem. Countries like Cuba, by focusing on the preventive care model, then the community health workers is what Brazil has worked upon, and the Nordic countries, they, by the sheer amount of public investment that they are making in the healthcare sector, they have been able to establish universal access when it comes to healthcare. Now coming to the way forward, what all yet remains to be done by us. First is that we need to increase our public health investment, increase it to 2.5% of GDP. Then we also need to efficiently utilize whatever budget we are allocating and reduce the out-of-pocket expenditures that citizens have to make, so that poverty, inequality, that also we focus on, that also we tackle simultaneously while dealing with healthcare. Then we need to strengthen our primary health care. The health and wellness centers, the primary health centers, the community health centers, and a strong referral system, wherein this network is robustly connected to the secondary and to the tertiary healthcare setup. The shift to the preventive healthcare that we need to make, focusing on immunization, nutrition, focusing on NCD prevention, health awareness, screening, and then diagnosis at an early stages of all the diseases is something we need to do. The governance in this aspect, we need to execute our schemes in a much better way. The underutilization that remains an issue, that should also be tackled. Then the planning and monitoring we have, it has to be data driven. We need to incorporate AI, we need to incorporate technology at all fronts so that we can have robust models, we can have data monitoring at all times. Then when it comes to health workforce and technology, the doctor and nurse shortage is something we should be focusing more on, which we are already doing by increasing the number of colleges in this. Then coming to the rural health incentives, the Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, telemedicine, AI enabled healthcare, all of this needs to be incorporated simultaneously, ensuring a universal and equitable healthcare through the presence of universal health coverage, focusing more on the vulnerable groups that we talked about, and reducing the regional disparities, whether it is the rural urban or the interstate disparities that we have. This is the main question that you can practice after following this discussion. Moving on to our next topic, which is regarding the drug abuse in India. So basically, we first need to see that we as a nation, we are called as one of the youngest nations in the world. There is a reason for the same, because nearly 2/3 of our population right now is in the working age group. But this demographic dividend that we have, it can any day turn into a demographic burden if our youth, they are engaged in issues like drug abuse. That is why this is of primary importance. That is why there has been the launch of Nasha, Mukt, Yuva for Viksit, Bharat, Sankalp, Abhiyan, wherein we are connecting two areas. One is the healthcare, the well-being of the youth with the economic goals that we have as a nation. Because any day these two things are intertwined with each other. So let us look at what has been the development. So PM Modi launched the Nasha Mukt Yuva for Viksit Bharat Sankalp Abhiyan. So we as a nation, we are aspiring to become a developed nation by 2047. More than 1 crore youth participated in this Abhiyan that we had. This has been supported by various organizations, institutions, industry associations. Now this campaign will continue for over 100 weeks, where every Sunday there will be various activities. The objective is to make our youth drug-free, to increase the community participation we have, to increase the social engagement that we have, to ensure that we have a healthy workforce for Viksit Bharat, for developed India at 2047. Now what is the objective? We want to build a drug-free India through youth participation. Firstly, let us see what is actually drug abuse. Drug abuse is basically taking in excessive or harmful dosages of any psychotropic substance that can cause us social, physical, psychological, economical harm. This is basically what the issue of drug abuse is. Now, this is linking public health with nation building. We are focusing on preventive awareness rather than only enforcement. So what will be the activities that will be included? There is sports, yoga, meditation, art and culture, community service. Participants include schools, colleges, NGOs, religious organizations, and even industrial associations. The core philosophy of this Abhiyan remains that healthy youth can only become productive workforce, and that can only make us a developed nation. What is the magnitude of this problem? The issue is that millions of our youth, they remain affected by alcoholism, by this drug abuse, wherein 3 crore of our people, they are using cannabis, 2.3 crore opioid users, then millions require treatment, but only a small fraction, 10% of the people who are affected, only they get the treatment, and the remaining 90%, they remain untreated. So we should not look at it like a crime, rather we should also look at it from a rehabilitative perspective, wherein these people, they need to be cured and ultimately made a part of society. Coming to the causes behind drug abuse, there are various reasons. First, at the individual level, there is curiosity. That is why the young population, the youth, they remain more vulnerable to such kind of addictions. Then there is stress. When it comes to examinations, to employment opportunities, there is a lot of stress on the youth. Then there is also peer pressure. Family level, there is, whenever there is neglect, there is abuse or broken families leading to the isolation of the child, it leads to the child being more vulnerable to fall into bad company and thereby develop such bad habits. Coming to the community level, earlier there was kind of taboo that was related to this. Now, because of the wide availability that is there, the social acceptance has also increased. There is no awareness regarding the harmful impacts that any such abuse can have on the person. Then there are structural reasons like unemployment, like urbanization, like migration, leading to a cutoff from the roots, the social ties that the person had, ultimately leading to him falling into any kind of peer pressure. Then the international issue, wherein the cross-border trafficking, it is widely present. We will be discussing that. There are social consequences, for example, family breakdowns, domestic violence, which is more likely to happen in such families. The children, they are more likely to drop out from the schools. The juvenile crime, it is also likely to increase. Then the economic consequences, because the person will then not be a part of the productive part of the society, increasing the healthcare burden and also reducing the demographic dividend, because every person engaged in such activities, they will not be a part of our workforce. Coming to the health consequences, the obvious is that of addiction. In worst cases, it also leads to overdose, also leads to death. Then coming to the mental illnesses, because such people are more vulnerable to develop psychological or psychiatric issues. Then the HIV AIDS, hepatitis, so HIV AIDS more likely to be transferred because of the needles, the syringe that they are using. So more often than not, they are not taken care of. Then internal security, because the availability of these drugs, these networks, they are also connected to terrorism, organized crime, illegal arms, human trafficking. We face more issues when it comes to border management. The corruption, it is bound to increase because of this money which is illicitly developed. Then the criminal networks, they are even more solidified. In recent times, we are even seeing more organized crime developing around this issue. Then why is this such a serious issue? Why have we not been able to tackle this? First is the rising availability, because earlier there were traditional smuggling routes that were there. Right now, there is easy access to these routes through the local networks. There is also online trafficking, dark web, and because of social media penetrating deep into the society, the availability has even more increased. Now there are also synthetic drugs that have come up, which are highly addictive and easily concealed, and they are also cheap. That is why the availability has increased. Cross-border smuggling via land, sea and air routes is there. If we look at the geographical position of India, we see that India is sandwiched between two regions. One, that of Golden Crescent, which comprises of Afghanistan, Iran, Pakistan. The second, that of Golden Triangle, comprising of Myanmar, Laos and Thailand. It has long and porous borders, the land borders, because of which the smuggling keeps on happening. Then coming to the maritime routes, we have a long maritime boundary as well, and that also remains vulnerable to such kind of illicit activities. Another factor which is contributing to the severity of this issue is the youth population we have, which is unemployed basically and lacks opportunities, due to which what is happening, that these unemployed youth, they remain more vulnerable to urban stress, to the lifestyle changes that they are facing, ultimately falling into peer pressure and trying to kind of establish some kind of social influence. That is why they keep on falling into such traps. The mental health crisis, the rising cases of depression, anxiety, loneliness, they remain untreated. This is something, one area which has come recently. We need to work more on this. Whenever a person, he lacks emotional support systems, he is more likely to escape from this stress and trauma and fall into escapist mechanisms, which these psychotropic substances anyway provide them. Now coming to the organized crime issue, this is not something that is merely related to the health or to the youth, but this is also an internal security problem for India, wherein this has links with terror financing, to weapons trade, money laundering and other kind of organized and severe crimes. Because of the profitability that has increased in the recent times, even more sophisticated networks and technologies these people have incorporated. Coming to the legal framework that India has established when it comes to drug abuse in India, first, our principal legislation in this regard is the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act of 1985. This is our principal legislation which covers the entire supply chain, starting from production, manufacturing, possession, sale, purchase, transport. Everything is covered, and in severe cases there are stringent punishments. There is even confiscation of property that is allowed under this act. The next act we have in this regard is the Prevention of Illicit Trade in Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act. This provides for preventive detention, which is taking care of the issue even before the crime has taken place. There are other provisions under IPC, CRPC, PMLA, IT Act, Customs Act, Foreign Trade Development and Regulation Act, Drug and Cosmetics Act, which are dealing with the issue of drug abuse. Then coming to the institutional mechanism we have to deal with the issue, first is the Narcotics Control Bureau, which is functioning under the Ministry of Home Affairs. It is coordinating with state agencies and also international bodies simultaneously to deal with the issue. Then is the Directorate of Revenue Intelligence, which is enforcing the provisions related to smuggling of narcotics. The Custom Department is basically tackling the export or the import of narcotics. The BSF, which is dealing with the issue on the borders. Indian Coast Guard, increasing the maritime surveillance. Then the state police, which conducts any kind of investigation, enforcement, arrests and prosecution in this regard. Then the NIA, which handles narco-terrorism, the organized crime linkages, the terror financing linkages of drug abuse. Then Narco Coordination Center, the multi-agency coordination platform for real-time information sharing. What are the initiatives? This is not the first initiative. The primary has been Nasha Mukt Bharat Abhiyan, which was launched in 2020. More often than not, these are awareness programs and outreach programs, so that the children know, the youth knows what are going to be the harmful impacts. Coming to the recent one, the Nasha Mukt Yuva for Viksit Bharat Sankalp Abhiyan, the 100-week nationwide campaign that we are talking about. Then the National Action Plan for Drug Demand Reduction. So herein there are two issues. One is the supply and second is the demand. So if we can tackle the issue at any of these levels, it is going to be equally productive. So herein we are focusing on demand reduction. We are not focusing only on the supply aspect, wherein we are trying to stop the cross-border infiltration of drugs. Rather, we are also tackling that the demand at the source, it should not be there. Then there are rehabilitation centers which provide counseling and aftercare support so that these people are reintegrated into the society. Coming to the National Toll-Free De-Addiction Helpline, then the Manas portal, which is dealing with the mental health issues, then the NCORD, Narco Coordination Center, Anti-Narcotics Task Force. These are all the things you can be mentioning in any question which can come up in your GS3 paper out of this topic. Next, coming to the international cooperation that we have in this regard, we are cooperating with agencies like Interpol when it comes to investigation of such cases. We are also coordinating with United Nations Office on Drug and Crime. Then when it comes to the minilateral, multilateral or even bilateral relationships at the global level, we are trying to tackle this as an issue in its comprehensiveness. So we are not the only country that is facing this in isolation. Rather, it is an organized network. So that is why cooperation at multilateral level, it becomes important. What are the challenges? First is the enforcement because of our long borders, because of incorporation of new technologies like drones, dark web, crypto, and the corruption which is funding all of this. Then there are also social issues like stigma, family denial or lack of acceptance after rehabilitation into the society, and late treatment issues. Then the health issues, lack of rehab centers, lack of psychiatrists or the specialized doctors in this regard, and poor follow-up. Then the governance issues, they remain. For example, the coordination issues and the low conviction rates. What more needs to be done, or the way forward for this issue, is that we need to focus on prevention by awareness, by including life skills education, by focusing on skill development, vocational training, better sports infrastructure, which will lead the person to develop better mental and physical health. And at all times, mental health counseling should be available to the student in the schools and colleges. Detection has to be the next level, wherein we have to do the surveillance from AI based tools, drone monitoring and coastal vigilance we have to increase. Coming to the community participation in this regard, parents, teachers, religious institutions, NGOs, youth clubs, all of them have to be involved if we are to tackle this issue. Then governance, we need better center-state coordination, real-time intelligence, stronger prosecution. International cooperation, it has to be increased when it comes to border management, maritime cooperation, financial intelligence, or the sharing of all the information that we have. We have placed a mains question that you can practice after listening to the discussion. Coming to our next topic on mains value addition, which is regarding inequality. This is regarding a reply which has been placed by the Finance Ministry in Lok Sabha, which has stated that gross total income above 100 crore, the people with such income, the number has increased from 142 in 2021 to 576 in 25-26. This is a huge growth. Then India has nearly $1 million millionaires, which means more than 10 lakh people who are millionaires in terms of dollars. This UBS Global Wealth Report of 2026, India has nearly 9.44 lakh dollar millionaires. This number of people who are millionaires in terms of dollars. Now this is comparable with very rich nations like Switzerland and only slightly below Spain. All of this is happening, this accumulation of wealth, this growth of income for certain sections is happening, while for a large majority, what is the reality? That their average salary is around 22,699 rupees per month. And the annual income is that of 2.7 lakh rupees. The casual labor wages, the PLFS says that average daily wage worker, he is earning rupees 453 every day. All of this is also leading to consumption inequality, which means that the consumption or the demand for the products which are premium in nature, which are expensive, that is increasing. Simultaneously, the demand for the products which are consumed by the large majority, by the middle income and lower income groups, that consumption is reducing. Rise of gig economy is there. See, in recent years, we have seen the coming up of AI, due to which there has been a structural change in the white collar jobs, ultimately leading to a rise in the gig economy. The Zomato and Blinkit together, they have 10 lakh riders in India, which is a huge number. And for Zepto, these numbers have also increased. All of this is creating the issue or concern for number one, income or social insecurity, wage inequalities, ultimately leading to another social issue concern. Moving to the next topic, which is regarding the conservation of the Asiatic wild buffalo. So the issue has been in news because the Chhattisgarh Forest Department, they have proposed a translocation of this animal from Assam. This is the state animal of Chhattisgarh. The scientific name is Bubalus arne, largest wild bovine in the world. It is the ancestor of the domestic wild water buffalo that we have. It is distinct from the feral buffaloes. You must remember the IUCN status for your prelims. The IUCN status is endangered and not critically endangered. It is under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act. India harbors over 90% of the global wild buffalo population. Such facts you must always remember. The largest population within India is there in Assam, and small populations are also there in Chhattisgarh, Meghalaya and Maharashtra. So there could be statements like this is endemic to India, this remains confined only in the northeast of India. Such statements you should be able to identify and tackle. What are the major threats? Habitat loss, poaching, hybridization with domestic buffaloes, disease transmission, and human-wildlife conflict. There are certain conservation mechanisms which are mentioned. One is that of species translocation, which takes place when the number drops significantly in one area. So we decide to translocate them from some other area which has abundant population of that particular species. Then we have habitat restoration, genetic management, artificial insemination that we are taking in for this. Coming to the next topic, which is regarding the global Lepidoptera hotspot. So the context remains that the Zoological Survey of India has created a comprehensive catalogue of the Lepidoptera species. Coming to what is Lepidoptera, so it is the second largest order of insects, which includes butterflies and moths. What are the characteristic features? Their wings are covered with tiny overlapping scales. Rather, the literal meaning of Lepidoptera is also scaling wings. India has more than 13,000 species of Lepidoptera. Around 8.25% of the world's Lepidoptera occur in India. 1,417 of butterflies, 12,286 of moths. What is the basic difference? You must remember that butterflies, they remain active during the day, therefore called as diurnal. Moths, they remain active during the night and thereby are called as nocturnal. The antennae of butterfly is club-shaped. That of moth is thread-like or feathered. The body is slender for butterfly and it is thick and hairy body for a moth. The resting position, wings are folded vertically when at rest for butterflies and they are spread flat or tent-like when moth is resting. Colors usually bright and colorful for butterflies and dull and camouflaged for the moths. The flight is graceful and fluttering for the butterflies and faster and more erratic are the moths. So you must remember what is the characteristic feature, that there are scaly wings and there is complete metamorphosis. This is something that is a favorite area of UPSC, the life cycle spanning from egg converting to larva, then to pupa, then to adult. What is the ecological role these species are performing? One is that of pollinators, obviously. Second, that of bioindicator. What is a bioindicator? It is basically a species. If there is a decrease in the number of individuals of that particular species, it is a reflective of the habitat as such. And thereby they are an important part of the food chains. The role they are playing in pollination, butterflies are pollinating the bright and the nectar-rich flowers, while moths, they are pollinating the white and the fragrant flowers because they are active at the night. The bright colors are visible during the day. Threats, habitat loss, pesticides, climate change, light pollution. Also, there are certain mimicry behaviors that UPSC might want to ask you. One is the species of Bartesian. So this is a harmless species, but it is imitating a harmful species so as to escape the predators. Similarly, the Mullerian species, both of them are harmful and they resemble each other for better recognition. The migratory species amongst this, you must remember, blue tiger, common crow and painted lady. They are protected under the WPA of 1972. The state butterflies of two states, Maharashtra and Karnataka. Maharashtra, blue mormon, and Karnataka, southern birdwing, you must remember. The largest butterfly of India is the golden birdwing. The largest butterfly of world remains the Queen Alexandra birdwing. The smallest butterfly of India remains the grass jewel. The largest moth in India is Atlas moth. The silk moths are that of Mulberry, Tassar, Muga, Eri. Regarding the Zoological Survey of India, this is the primary body that is responsible for cataloguing and documenting the faunal species. This was established in 16 and the headquarters is at Kolkata. Coming to the next topic for our prelims examination, the review by the Monetary Policy Committee. So RBI conducts the monetary policy through its Monetary Policy Committee. Firstly, we must remember that this Monetary Policy Committee consists of 6 members. One, the RBI Governor, who is also the ex officio chairperson. Then the Deputy Governor, one RBI nominee, and then 3 people who are coming from outside and nominated or appointed by the central government. The primary objective of the MPC is to maintain the price stability while keeping in mind the objective of growth. So they have to keep in mind that there is a balance between inflation and economic growth at all times. The target that has been set is that of 4% of CPI inflation and the band is that of 2 to 6%. This is where the tolerance limit lays. What is basically the repo rate? So RBI lends for short term to the commercial banks at a certain rate. That rate is known as repo rate. Whenever there is an increase in the repo rate, the loans become costlier for the banks, which are then transferred to the businesses and also the consumers. When they are receiving loans at higher rates, it will lead to decrease in demand and thereby a decrease in inflation. The reverse is true for the decrease in repo rate, wherein borrowing increases and growth it increases because of increase in demand. What is the context in which we are studying this? That MPC is likely to keep the repo rate unchanged, which is reflective of a stability or a balanced growth that is happening right now. But at the same time, we must also be concerned about certain uncertainties which are happening. For example, the increasing crude oil prices, the geopolitical tensions, and also the monsoon related things, because the monsoon we are expecting less than normal this year because of El Nino. What are the factors which influence the RBI's repo rate decisions? Inflation, GDP, crude oil prices, the exchange rate. We know that rupee has weakened in comparison to dollar in recent times, and we've also seen that the global developments, whenever there is oil prices rising, that is also or geopolitical tensions which are leading to such economical consequences, these are also influencing the repo rate decisions. So what is happening as a result of weakening of Indian rupee? That our imports, they are becoming costlier. Let us come to our last topic of discussion, which is digital arrest. Firstly, we must understand that this is not a legal term which has been used in any act or statute. No authority, when it comes to police, CBI, ED, RBI, customs, nobody is authorized to conduct a digital arrest. This is not something that is even there in Bharatiya Nyaya Suraksha Sanhita. So under the Indian law, all the arrests and investigations, they must follow the procedures under the BNSS, and there is no provision for digital arrest. But what is happening in practice is these people, they make fake phone calls or video calls using official logos or uniforms. They even have sometimes fake ID cards. Now they tell the victim that they are under digital arrest because maybe their SIM card or their Aadhaar card or their bank account has been found to be linked with some kind of organized crime like drug trafficking or money laundering. These people, they use fear tactics. The victim is then coerced to transfer his money to an account which they call as safe account or verification accounts. These people, basically they are using certain tactics. For example, they have this understanding of what is causing a fear psychosis in the person. They create that sense of urgency. They manipulate the psychology of the person and then they conduct such crimes. What are the key red flags? That they would demand to remain on continuous video call. There would be threat of immediate arrest. Then they would ask for any kind of OTPs, bank details, money transfers. They would use fake FIRs, warrants or even ID cards. What should be done? To disconnect the call immediately, do not transfer any money, and the reporting of such a crime to the National Cyber Crime Helpline. For such topics, there are terms like phishing, which means voice over phone calls, which is used for phishing. So whenever if such a term comes up, you must be able to identify that it is related to cyber frauds. That was all for today's discussion. Thank you so much.